Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Be still, my soul. Be still, my soul. Be still and know my God is here. Be still, my soul. Be still, my soul. Be still and know my God is here. All I need to know is this: you are a good God, the maker of heaven calls me is. You are a good God, and your heart beats in my chest. You are a good God, all that I have to do is rest. You are a good God. I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. My God is here. He will make a way. He will make a way. He will make a way. My God is here. All I need to know is this: you are a good God. The maker of heaven calls me his. You are a good God, and your heart beats in my chest. You are a good God, all that I have to do is rest. You are a good God. You give me your eyes, you give me your heart. Your spirit flows through my veins. You give me your eyes, you give me your heart. Your spirit flows through my veins. You give me your eyes, you give me your heart. Your spirit flows through my veins. You give me your eyes, you give me your heart. Your spirit flows through my veins. Oh, you give me your eyes, you give me your heart. You had a plan right from the start. I know who I am, 'cause I know who you are. You are a good God. All that I need to know is this: the maker of heaven calls me his. All that I need to know is this: you are a good God. The maker of heaven calls me his. You are a good God, and your heart beats in my chest. You are a good God, all that I have to do is rest. You are a good God. 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 You are a good God.
broken back together. The poor are blessed, the weary rest. We will dance forever. The blinded see, the chained are free, the doubtful now believer, the outcast known, the orphan home. You are my Redeemer. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. Return, the voiceless heard, the mourner now rejoicing, the mountains shake, the world awake, creation all composing, the sad untrue, the earth renewed, the song has found its singer, the darkness light, the dead alive. You are my Redeemer. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new. You are 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 making all things new. Behold, behold, behold what love can do. Behold, behold, He's making all things new.
Hi friends, before I get to my message, I've got a couple things to bring to our collective attention. First, for the past several years, Crosspointe has been partnering with the White Oak Foundation to provide holiday gifts for people in the area that the White Oak Foundation serves. Some of you have been involved over the last 5 years. This year, rather than personally shopping for each family this year, we're going to be collecting a variety of gifts through Monday, December 8th, and we're going to create a shopping opportunity at White Oak. So this is going to allow each family to actively participate in the selection of Christmas gifts for their families by selecting gifts from the store that we're going to be helping to provide them. There's no cost to them to do this. So you can imagine this is going to be a huge blessing for lots of people, lots of families. So not only is the program going to need gifts, but also volunteers for the actual shopping experience at White Oak. If you'd like to be involved, you want to know more, please, as soon as you can, go to crosspointe.org/events and then look for the gift drive, and it'll tell you how to get involved. Next, as we highlight every year, as we start to talk about Christmas, and then words like tradition and family and best time of the year starts to fill up our speech and the airwaves, we're reminded that it has the opposite effect for us sometimes. So if you'd like, we invite you to join us December 11th at 6:30 in person, 7 o'clock online for our annual Remember service. This is a space where we've done this for years. Everybody's welcome. You're going to find some usness, some hope, compassion, support, and just a general sense of comfort as we navigate the paradox of joy and grief coexisting like they do. So Go to crosspoint.org/events/remember service to register or learn more if you have questions. And then talking about Christmas, we want to start thinking about Crosspoint's Christmas services. This year we've got 2 identical 1-hour Christmas services. One in the morning, December 21st at 10, one in the evening, the same day, the 21st, at 6:30. So we'd love for you and your people to be there. As we always do, we're going to have you select tickets for every individual that will be coming with you, because everybody's in one room of all ages. So that helps us keep the 2 services balanced and comfy when you let us know by getting tickets. So go to crosspoint.org/Christmas and get your tickets as soon as you can, please and thank you. And then finally, a reminder that Crosspoint is funded entirely by folks who choose to sustain it. So if you'd like to be one of those people, make sure that Crosspoint is sustained. Go to crosspoint.org/contribute and find a way to participate financially that suits you. Please and thank you for that as well. All right, moving right along. I was shown this a couple years ago, and it's sort of become my favorite, for the time being, this obscure default metaphor for me personally, how I think about a particular facet of my faith. If you like it, you can have it too. This is a Morse code chart, each letter represented by various dots and dashes. I'm sure you have at least a vague awareness of it. And I want to draw your attention to the M and how that's dash dash, and then the I. See how that's dot to dot. So if you think about this in terms of music, you could say that the dots are each 1 beat and the dashes are 1.5 beats. And if you do that, you would get 5 beats per bar. And that's exactly what composer Lalo Schifrin was doing when he wrote the Mission Impossible theme, the MI theme. So I was going to play it for you, but I think we'd be flagged if we did a video of that. So I want you to, I'm going to play it as well as I can. Listen to it. Notice how the melody is M and I and dash dash and dot dot over and over. So it would be dash dash dot dot dash dash dot dot dash dash dot dot dash dash dot dot. Only one mess up. That's better than I thought I'd do. I didn't know anything about that. Like I said, I was just shown this a couple years ago. Sort of blew my mind because it was right there in front of me the whole time. It's genius. I just never knew that. It was already familiar, and so it was already something that I stopped being curious about. And so that's my favorite wow, when it comes out of what I thought was familiar, and it proves to be actually unfamiliar. And it comes with a sense of deepened appreciation. If you didn't already know this about the song, I wonder if you can identify a similar feeling. Maybe it blew your mind, but it doesn't have to be that strong of a feeling. Maybe you just had a regular, oh, neat, that's interesting. So I'm not worried about the intensity of the feeling. I wonder if you notice a feeling that something common, something familiar, was just reintroduced to you as having more depth and nuance than you previously appreciated. You might notice an increased sense of appreciation, maybe an increased sense of respect. Wow, I just thought that was a song to a TV show and then some movies. That's really thoughtful. And so maybe that comes with also a sense of curiosity. Like it sort of germinates a sense of, what else don't I know about the things I think I already know about? Things that have been around my entire life. And so maybe in the slightest measure, you feel gratitude. Not because something changed, but because you have observed something you previously had not observed. Nothing's really changed except for your noticing. I like how Eckhart Tolle put it when he said, gratitude helps you see what's there instead of what isn't. We're so aware of what isn't. But before we receive this as like a warning against greed, and therefore like why that quote disconnected from the Mission Impossible thing, I want you to see, we're going to talk about something very deeply that comes long before we have a conversation about greed. This isn't about greed. In Exodus chapter 3, Moses has long ago run away from Egypt. Let's just say things went badly for him there. He's got a reputation. You could legitimately refer to him as a fugitive. But he's been out there in the wilderness for a long time now. It's where he works, far away from everything, watching somebody else's flocks for 40 years. But you don't get the sense that he's bitter about the last 4 decades and how they've gone or how they haven't gone. Even though any human being, it would make sense to, like maybe he's wondered, is this all there is to life? But you don't get that sense as much as we're shown somebody who's really learned how to be out there, watching sheep, So it says Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel, the messenger of the Lord, appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. Moses looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I got to turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. And when the Lord saw that Moses had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you're standing is holy ground. And he said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And then he has this conversation with Moses, and the text goes on to explain that God is calling Moses to be the Moses that we all know, the Moses who goes back into Egypt to free his own people from their generations-long enslavement. But before that calling, before that self-actualization occurs, first, Moses has to prove to God, to himself, he has to prove to us, the reader, that he's somebody who can pay attention, somebody who can notice, someone who sees what's there, not just what isn't. And there are all these ancient commentaries written by rabbis that say, Moses is rewarded for looking when he turns his head or he took steps toward the site. They argue about how Moses postures himself as he's noticing, but they agree God speaks to Moses when Moses notices what other people may have ignored. What, for all we know, that he had not noticed for 40 years. Because brush fires weren't all that uncommon. Surely you've seen a fire or two outside this year, but not very many. Moses saw multiple fires outside every day. So seeing fire from a distance was as common for him as seeing streetlights would be for you and me. So how long do you have to observe a fire before you start to notice, wait, this isn't behaving like fire. It's not consuming the wood that the flames are dancing on. How long before you realize, wait a minute, there's no smoke? A minute? 5 minutes? Maybe 30 minutes of looking back again? The point is, quote, when the Lord saw that Moses had turned aside to see, God called him out of the bush. It's not an overstatement to say that the entirety of the Exodus, the central story of the Hebrew Bible, and Moses' role in conducting it, which forms the basis of the Israelite identity, it actually comes down to this moment. Moses noticed. Thousands of years later, Jesus taught the kingdom of heaven, which is not a place. It is something that we become aware of in our midst. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and reburied. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold everything he had and bought the pearl. There's this theme throughout the biblical texts and in Jesus' teachings and in other wisdom traditions outside of our own, where we're invited to learn how to observe in the very place we've not previously observed, in the very place others are not seeing, to see there, and in doing so finding ourselves living more attuned to depth and fullness and contentment, to learning how to hear the quiet whisper of the Spirit. So think of the contrast. A tradition could send you and I on a quest, and it would require all this patience and resources and years to finally get to the place because you outperformed and outlearned everybody else on the same quest and you got there. You could have that. That makes sense on a lot of levels. Or you could become the kind of person who stops driving past the field without looking. You can become the kind of person who sees that this little hardened ball of oyster goo, this is not just an ordinary pearl. Hang on a second. The kind of people who see the presence of the divine in a boring old wilderness shrub, or avoid it because the tradition actually holds it was a thorn bush. Thorn bushes, I avoid those. Become the kind of people who see something else. You and I can become the kind of people in all these traditions, all these wisdom invitations. You and I could become the kind of people who own our attention and steer it more ourselves to actually see the world we're already immersed in, so that we can see it as holding far more to discover than we previously saw. That the place can hold more than we previously understood. A moment can hold more. The people around us could hold more. The season that we can't wait for it to pass could actually hold more. But we're immersed now in this attention economy, and I mean, every one of us are. And what happens is we're likely to miss more and more reality around us because our focus is always drawn away to something more immediately interesting and shiny. I mean, frankly, I'm aware that I've only gotten this far in the message, and a lot of people have already clicked off. And it's not because I'm doing a bad job necessarily. It's just I've been talking for several minutes, and talking doesn't do much for dopamine. So the attention shifts. I'm not throwing any stones about this. The struggle is, as they say, real. I totally get this. In case you're getting ready to click off, here's an exciting explosion. Now I have you for a few more minutes. You might recall God appears to Moses and the Israelite people later, long after the burning bush scene. When he's leading them all out of Egypt, God appears as this pillar of fire. But that's interesting. That comes after the burning little thorn bush that Moses almost missed. And I wonder if there's a principle in that for us. We'd obviously prefer the big, impossible to ignore, attention-grabbing thing that is easy to spot. But the deal seems to be, nope, obscure burning bushes first. And maybe first we have to see that the gifts are already here before we take on anything else. Albert Einstein said, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. He may not have said that. Other people said that he said that. And really, Albert, what did paying attention to little things ever reveal to you, right? Quite a bit. I mean, seriously, though, if it was him or somebody else that said it, you start to notice all these different wisdom traditions saying, do you see the depth of life, the deep wisdom in all what's already there? It's already here. Have you noticed? I mean, I think this might be why there's this theme of Jesus going around healing blind people, not just because that was awesome for those particular blind people, because it was, but also because I think we're supposed to notice the pattern of him going through the countryside, not necessarily changing the culture or the world with the magic wave of his hands, but giving people the ability to see, to really observe the world as it actually already is. Because, if you've begun paying attention as you've gotten older, you know I'm right. There are burning bushes of invitation all around us. And gratitude simply flows out of seeing more of what's there, rather than our fixation on what is not. I'm not talking about saying thank you out of feeling like guilt or shame or fear that we're supposed to. It's awareness of a bigger, deeper, fuller picture that we'd previously not seen. Now, I want to talk about specifically why we're not seeing it. Because I don't want you or I believing, well, the problem is it's just all the pain and all the stress, all the terrible circumstances. It makes it impossible to observe all the light and the goodness. And so, so gratitude is just difficult. It'll be easier later. I know it seems that way, and it actually is initially. It seems that way for me initially. But I want you to remember that terrible circumstances can come and then not go. They show up and it erases your entire ability to see the good and the beautiful and to feel any gratitude. And then somebody is like, well, it could be worse, and makes it 100 times worse. But those circumstances don't change. They stay and they normalize. And over the course of that experience, you can go from miserable and unavailable and a little blinded to used to it, adapted to it, happy again, even if the circumstances don't change back to how they were. So I want us to be careful not to assume that circumstances have to change in order for us to see the fuller picture about which to have gratitude and depth and wholeness. We've actually got more agency over this, with or without the permission of circumstances. What happens to you, happens to me, happens to all of us, and it's just how our brains work. Our brains have a very simple job. It's super complex, but it's simple. The goals are the same this year as the year before, next year. Your brain avoids danger, avoids pain, and avoids death. That's your brain's, everything can be categorized under one of those things. That's really the size of it. The brain is constantly running programs for maximizing safety, maximizing comfort, maximizing distance from death. No judgments on that. That's God's design. And if you're not convinced that that's how things work, I'll put it this way. Our brains running those programs got the species all the way from there to here. It works. No matter how you slice it, it's sacred and it is to be respected. But we are more than brains running survival and pleasure scripts. And if you've come to feel a little hollowed out, like, is this all there is to life? This might be the realization. Life has got to be more than maximizing safety, maximizing comfort, maximizing distance from death. Some of the most unhappy people I know are the most comfortable and the safest. You know that. Because if that's all we allow ourselves to believe that we are, or unconsciously allow ourselves to live as though that's all that's true, then there's going to be a very well-developed habit of focusing on problems and what's gone wrong, what could go wrong. And so there's not much to feel thankful for, that deep, resonant, soulful gratitude about the beauty that life has, even though there are also hardships. There's not going to be much space for the warmth and the meaning and the sense of abundance that comes from a life of gratitude when we've trained ourselves or let ourselves be trained with a smile on our face to see our days as a series of problems to suffer, to focus on. Because if our attention is chiefly on safety, comfort, survival, then the eyes and the ears of our imagination will be tuned to what has and will go wrong. We become like smoke detectors. We can only understand ourselves as sniffing the air for smoke. And that's valid. But then we don't even notice the smell of baked bread or the way an infant's scalp smells. We're fixated on what could go wrong. And this habit that we have good reason for it. That's why we hold it with not with judgment, but compassion and gentleness. We're holding it to say, this is true. We have good reason for this habit. We have good reason for being smoke detectors. But we're saying yes to an invitation that's inviting us to expand on that, because there's not a whole lot of life in just letting our brain run survival and pleasure scripts. So I want to spend a moment talking about this to highlight what this focus on problems looks like, so we might see ourselves diagnostically. But I want to admit there's a paradox in this, because I'm going to focus on the problem we have in the name of how to not focus on problems so much. So I'm admitting that. I just don't want you to think about these next couple minutes as being shamed or being told that you're too afraid or that you're lazy or something like that, but are having the courage to recognize together what's happening so that we might grow and expand on it. Because as this habit of fixation on problems gets its roots in, we start to just assume it's our personality or somebody else's personality. And that's what makes it feel inevitable. And so then it just becomes really hard to see, and then other people are going to point it out to you, and that's not fun. But you're going to start to see that it's really gotten its roots in your criticism of yourself and of others. That's going to be part of most of your responses to every plan or idea presented to you. The reasons why something is a stupid waste of time, that's going to be a way easier list to create than a list of, here's all the things that are awesome about this idea. You'll assume that a look on somebody's face or a delayed text, it'll bloom into full-blown stories of why you're hated. You'll find yourself arguing about an offense or somebody's failure, or someone's obviously negative intent toward you, instead of focusing on, how can we write this? You won't be able to answer even the question, how are you doing, without this impulse with your tone, your expression, your words, to make sure that because you're not doing perfectly, that you can't say, well, the other person, it's just an impulse. The other person just needs to know, I have problems. Again, this isn't bad character. And it's not necessarily who you are, even though it starts to set in like a personality. It's this ingrained habit of thinking that the negative, the problems, that's where you should be sending all your energy. And so it's a way we've trained ourselves to not see very much, even though we're convinced we're the ones seeing the most. That's how it feels when you're a negative person. I'm not negative, I'm realistic. Maybe you've heard yourself say that. But we're not seeing very much. And so the same mechanism that helps us get through life effectively, something in psychology called procedural memory. And this is where you can do things without even thinking about them. You can just ride a bike and have a conversation. You can tie your shoe and answer questions. It's muscle memory. What begins to happen is you have procedural memory about all the disappointing, terrible things that have happened to you. Other people will talk about life or their plans or their experiences. And this psychological muscle memory inside you is just already underway. You don't even know that it's happening. You sort of reflexively talk about failures, problems, as if failure and problems was all there was to share about the thing. The pain caused you or that you caused, your inabilities to do this or that, your lack of skills, self-deprecating trash talk. See, procedural memory produces procedural storytelling. Every time this comes up, I just have to say this problem-focused thing. And off we go. It's like a program somebody enters the prompt for, and you just start telling stories about problems, negative outcomes in the past, the inevitable negative future, all of that stuff. And then other people aren't helpful because they'll say, you have an attitude problem. And that's not what it is. Quit being such a negative Nancy. Be positive. That's not helpful, because that pretends that what needs to happen is you should aim criticism at your criticism, that'll help you. That's not going to work. Instead, it's better if we recognize that our habit of letting our brain turn our lives into survival programs, where the things that get our attention, the things that glow the hottest, those are the problems, the disappointments, the potential pain. Let's recognize we've got good reasons for that habit. We do. That's true. But simultaneously, I want us to know all habits have good reasons. They all have good justifications. Every single habit has a reason why. And so will our new habits. So we can develop new habits. We don't have to use shame, using the old habits to develop new habits. If we're focused on problems and criticism and shame, and then we decide, okay, I don't like this, and so I'm going to aim this criticism at myself to improve myself. Trust me, you've already tried that. Please don't, when January 1st gets here, please don't do that. If that worked, it would have worked by now. Instead, we let love expand us, and it's going to look a little different, because it's not about trying to fix you. It's about learning to see what you hadn't seen before, with eyes of love and wonder, non-judgmental, uncritical wisdom, curiosity. That's when we start to say, wait a minute, how long has this thorn bush had magic fire in it? I mean, it took Moses 40 years to calm, to slow down, to learn to breathe and be where he was, to be a noticer, to start seeing what he hadn't seen before. I don't think it's going to take you 40 years. But it might take a long time, depending on how committed you are to your stories. That's a way of saying that you might be very committed to you not seeing the whole picture. But what we're trying to say yes to is paying attention, observing, remaining curious in the very spaces where it seems like, oh no, I already know everything about that field. I've already rendered all the judgments that need to be rendered about this thing. It's in those very spaces, if we will assume miracles, they don't have to be huge, if we'll stare at that silly little thorn bush until we can see the fire that does not consume, there's a payoff. And that payoff will be a life filled with a little more awe and a little bit more wonder and a little bit more gratitude. Nothing in the world will have necessarily changed, except we will be noticing what we previously just walked right past. That's how a life of fullness begins. It's not overnight. I don't think it's 40 years, but we will be on our way together. And so I wonder if we might just try to force ourselves into a new habit, proactively rather than reactively. And it can go something as simple as this. You can start this today. Write this down somewhere if you want. Spirit of love and healing, help me to see. Say that when you're by yourself. Say it to yourself during an argument. Spirit of love and healing, help me to see. You're praying and pausing to observe, without judgment, what's going on right now? What's going on around me? What's happening? What are the light and the sounds around me doing right now? Maybe just pause and see what I'm not noticing. Spirit of love and healing, help me to see without judgment. What values are being represented and what I or others are focused on right now, talking about, arguing about, planning? What is not being focused on? Help me to see what are the questions being asked and what assumptions and values are those questions growing out of? Spirit of love and healing, help me to see. Pause me so that I can observe without judgment what's happening in my body. Am I bracing right now for something that does not require me to brace for? How long have I been doing that? Is there tightness in my stomach or my chest or my throat constricting? Why is that? When else has that happened? What does my body think is happening right now? Spirit of love and healing, am I talking without really knowing what I'm trying to say? Without curiosity about the person I'm talking to? Spirit of love and healing, help me to see. Pause me so that I can observe with a commitment to see more than I normally do. To see what beauty, what help, what nuance, what non-threatening motivations this person might actually have, what wisdom might await me if rather than hurrying up and trying to make up my mind or get out of here, I just paused. What treasure is in the very field I'm driving by right now? What viable thing is there in this thing I'm shrugging at or barely noticing because of my procedural storytelling? What is it I could notice right now and really begin to see rather than me just kind of stopping at I'm already defensive because I already know what you mean. I already know what this is about. What else could I learn right now? Spirit of love and healing, help me to see that front page news is outrage because it keeps my attention. But on page 6, if they even printed it, there's human beings being delightful, being awesome. Help me to see that. Spirit of love and healing, help me to see that the negative self-deprecating, life sucks and then you die attitude, it's not me being a bad person. I'm just guarded. I'm a wounded person who actually longs to see the burning bush. I've just been hurt by thorn bushes before. Help me to see. The Apostle Paul, who literally was blinded and then regained his sight with a whole new sense of purpose and meaning about the world, he said this to his friends. He said, see that none of you repays evil for evil. Like, get out of that triggered response, but always seek to do good to one another and to all. And then he says, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. That's a tall order. I know it. Just this week, I said no to Paul, and I imagined myself smashing pumpkin pie in his face. But it helps to realize this isn't a detached command. Imagine his unimaginably challenging circumstances as well as those of his audience, and see that he's not ordering like perpetual closed-eyed prayer, asking for things, ignoring things. It's an open-eyed prayer. In the world as it is, walking by the field you've already walked by a million times and already drawn your conclusions about, prayer not in asking for things primarily, but like tuning yourself into the frequency of the world that you're actually inhabiting. Letting curiosity and wisdom show you more of what's happening. And with that seeing comes more rejoicing. And grief and worry, sure, but more rejoicing. And a lot more gratitude about the gift of life that you already have. And so as we close, I want to use something else Paul said from a jail cell, no less, to his chosen family in Philippi. And one thing that he said, man, he loves his lists. One thing that he said, if it was a list, I want to use this as a closing meditation. He said, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's pleasing, whatever's commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about, focus on these things. As for the things that you have learned and received and heard and noticed in me, do those things, and the God of peace will be with you. So I want to take a moment, maybe you want to grab pen and paper, and begin an open-eyed prayer. You can keep this paper or journal with you and watch in just a few weeks, starting to train our brains to move through the world in this open-eyed, observant praying. And then what will happen? Gratitude and appreciation. Ask yourself in the next few moments, what are some things in my immediate life that fit these ideas that Paul is listing out? Maybe you want to use words Paul didn't use. That's okay. Paul's not going to be offended if we add to his list. So just add that in there. But write down a few things that are true. What are some things that are true? What are some things that are honorable in my life? Take some time and write them down. Allow your brain to experience the work of not only focusing on what's gone wrong, danger, survival, pain. What's something that's just happening in your world around you? What's something that you find praiseworthy? And I know this is one of those things that you'll agree with me in principle, but you're not going to have an easy time actually starting. No judgment about that. Some of you are staring at right now saying, yeah, this is cool, but I'm not going to do it right now. Because we can be so tyrannized by negative feelings, it's hard to start something positive. So guess what? Just go through the motions. Pretend to have gratitude. Go through the motions regardless of how you feel. Observe as many things as you can and say thank you for them. Don't wait to feel gratitude. Perform gratitude on the heels of simply noticing. Because even doing it half-heartedly produces noticing. And your brain and your central nervous system, they're really simple. They will have been led to believe that there's more going on than pain, disappointment, danger, cynicism to focus on. And you will have become this much more aware, this much more attuned to the bigger picture, this much happier. And then you do it, you do it, you do it. Just go through the motions and watch how the result is just as real. What are things that are true and noble in your space? What is something that's the very best definition of pure happening in your corner of the world? and say yes to the invitation to notice it, to name it, and then give thanks for whatever big or little thing that sprouts right through the cracks of the familiar. And see if there aren't burning bushes all around. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.